Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the What If. Chapter 11. Chance Meetings. It had been 2 days since Naruto's little blow up. It was nighttime as we find our blonde hero sitting in a shallow crater surrounded by several mauled trees. To say he had been creative in their destruction would have been an understatement, as even in a rage Naruto used the time to test new abilities. He looked around for a moment, taking in the sight of the destroyed clearing. There were several trees that had holes bored through them with scorched edges from a rather interesting combination of lightning and wind-natured chakra. He'd read about storm release, which worked mostly the same way, but that was a water lightning Kekkei Genkai. This was something different, as the piercing power of lightning mixed with the cutting power of wind. It was odd watching the wind chakra spiral around the lightning chakra, and it created something pretty fucking dangerous. He tilted his head to the side slightly to get a better look at the tree behind the one full of holes. Sure enough, the tree behind that had a matching set, and the tree behind that, and the tree behind that, to continue off out of sight. Thinking he might have overdone that jutsu a bit, he looked down to his poor singed tail, which was free of his pants, as he had wanted to see if his clone's training with the thing had paid off. To an extent would be a good description. He had found that by channeling a jutsu through his tail he could call forth skills through said appendage, for instance, going through seals and smacking the ground with his tail to throw up an earth wall, or smacking a tree with a taser-infused tail. All in all, it was a productive blow-up, if he did say so himself, as he passed out from exhaustion. Morning. Haku was humming a nice tune as she walked through the forest. It was one of the few places that she could just relax. It was quiet, peaceful even. But like all things, peace being one of them, it was simply a temporary thing. She had come to find herbs to help Zabuza recover from the paralysis she had placed him under. It was her lot in life to serve the man. After all, he had saved her, raised her as his own, and taught her everything she needed to know to be an effective tool for him, to be used. And abused at his whim. Thankfully, the very few abuses had been near-death experiences due to her career choice, and not from anything more sinister. Walking for a few more minutes, she found herself in the clearing that had some of the best herbs she needed, only to find half of it was destroyed. She gasped when she noticed a familiar blonde boy in the middle of a small crater near the center of the clearing. It's him, she thought, her heart beginning to race at the possibilities. If this boy had Hyoten, could he really be family? The thought seemed foreign to her. She approached him slowly, careful to make sure he wasn't tricking her. What should I do? He could be family, but he's also Zabuza's enemy. Before she realized it, she had reached her hand out towards the boy. Whether to strangle him or wake him, she didn't know. She made to pull back, but the boy had apparently sensed the mixed intent in her actions, and a hand shot from the side and grabbed her arm. The boy shot up at his subconscious action and glared around bleary-eyed as sunlight filled his vision. Haku meanwhile nearly jumped out of her skin, as she had barely registered the hand grabbing hold of her, or the boy moving for that matter. Such speed. She flinched visibly at the contact. Naruto, only now coming to his senses, noticed the girl in front of him, or more specifically the hand that was grabbing the girl's wrist. With a quick apology, he released her and backed away a bit. Haku quickly lowered in a small bow. I'm sorry if I startled you. I was just checking to see if you were all right. It's not good to sleep out in the open like that. Naruto, on the other hand, was shocked at how pretty the girl in front of him was. Sure, she wasn't Anko. Not many people were that crazy after all, but she had her own beauty to her. Shaking his head to clear his thoughts as her words caught up to him. No problem. Sorry if I hurt you or anything. I usually don't react like that when I sleep. He rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. She smiled. Don't worry, I may not look like much, but I can protect myself just fine. Wow, she's got such a nice smile. Weird though, why does she seem so familiar? He took in a deep breath of morning air. What looked like a yawn was secretly him testing the sense around him. Seriously, why does she put me on edge? Maybe it's because she's that damn hunter nin you met the other day. Kyuubi growled inside his head. Naruto's eyes bugged comically, but he quickly calmed himself, realizing if this girl knew who he was, then she could easily kill him if he wasn't expecting it. Hell, maybe that was why his hand acted the way it did. She might have tried to choke him in his sleep. Haku noted Naruto's expression curiously. Something wrong? She asked, one of her hands tensing in anticipation. No. He said quickly, I just realized that I've been out here for 2 days. My sensei is probably gonna kick my ass when I get back, he chuckled nervously. Sensei, are you a ninja? Her hand relaxed a little bit. Naruto chuckled. Yep, the name's Naruto Uzumaki, and do you think a normal person could have done all this? He made a small motion with one of his hands indicating the destroyed clearing. I suppose not. What are you doing out here anyway? She asked, besides destroying a perfectly nice clearing, mentally rolling her eyes. Well, haha, I guess I was training. I kinda blew up on the client's kid and walked off so I wouldn't kill someone. I guess I took it out on the trees, at least they died for a good cause. He rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment and laughed when he noticed that the girl had that look on her face that meant it was a bullshit excuse. Hey, just why are you out here, miss? Haku. My name is Haku, and speaking of the forest, I came out here to gather herbs for a friend of mine. This clearing had several of the herbs I needed. She raised an eyebrow at Naruto accusingly. Sorry. He apologized sheepishly. If you want I could have this place fixed up in a sec. Oh, and just how do you plan to do that? She placed her hands on her hips as if waiting for him. You might need to move a little bit so you don't get caught up in this. As she backed off from the clearing, Naruto used a simple earth jutsu to fill in the holes in the clearing, then running through several elaborate sets of seals he slammed his palms together. Would release. Restoration. The air around Naruto started to buzz as the trees and plant life started to grow. The trees full of holes from Naruto's earlier experiments filled in, leaving no trace from their abuse. After a minute or so the clearing was even more vibrant than before, with many lush fruit-bearing trees and herb plants dotting the edges. Haku stood back and watched the transformation with wide eyes, Mokuden as well. Just who, or better yet what the hell is he? She was shaken from her amazement by the boy in question waving a hand in front of her face. Haku, hello, what? She started. You were spacing out there. Anything wrong? There was a genuine concern in his voice. Despite the two being enemies, Haku was starting to grow on him. She was nice if a bit too polite. And no, nothing's wrong. Good. He flashed one of his large smiles which made Haku blush slightly. Wait, blush. Haku was having the weirdest reaction to the boy. She felt a bit hot, steamy even. It started at her toes and worked its way up. She felt comfortable around him, even more so than with Zabuza himself. Well, I better pick the herbs I need for my friend. I've been out here longer than I should have. Okay, I'll help you. He threw her a thumbs up and the two went to work gathering the herbs she needed. Every once in a while Naruto would ask about a certain plant and its uses, to which Haku answered the best she could. All in all, it was a pleasant experience for the both of them. Standing up to wipe the sweat from her brow, Haku sighed. That should be enough. The small basket in her hands was filled to the brim with herbs. She turned and smiled to Naruto. Thank you for helping me, it was fun while it lasted. Oh, it was no big deal. Naruto grinned back. It would be a crime not to help a pretty girl like you. Haku couldn't hold it anymore as she let out a laugh. It wasn't a loud laugh, but it held an honest humor to it, like she was pushing aside all her troubles and just enjoying the moment. I had fun today. I wish I could stay, but my friend needs these herbs soon. I'll be seeing you. She turned and walked away, but almost as an afterthought she stopped. Oh, and by the way, I'm a guy. Before continuing on her way. An obvious lie. Kyuubi mentally snorted. You can practically feel her attraction for you. She's just making shit up so she doesn't have to face you. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the retreating girl. If she's attracted to you, go work your heroic mojo on her. Hehehehe. Naruto flashed a little grin at that. If this lady had the hots for him, maybe they wouldn't have to fight Zabuza after all. Naruto snuck up on the retreating girl, a crazy plan forming in his mind. Naruto slipped his arms around the girl and felt her stiffen in shock. Naruto-san, what are you do? You think a lie like that can fool me, Haku-chan? Or should I call you Hunter-chan instead? Oh Kami, he knows. Haku shook a little bit in the boy's grasp. He had his arms around hers, so even if she put up a fight she couldn't make use of her arms if he tightened his grip. Naruto could feel her shaking and decided to mess with her a little bit. Grinning, he spoke flippantly. I could smell you the entire time, so don't think you can fool my nose, Haku-chan. You are definitely not a guy. Oh no, he knows I'm. Wait, what? She thought curiously. He has me right where he wants me and he's making light of me telling him I'm a guy. She stopped shaking for a moment. Doesn't he want information from me? Use me as a hostage? Anything. She turned slightly to look over her shoulder to see the blonde grinning from ear to ear. The hell, he looks like he just played a prank on someone. The girl would have facepalmed if she could. Of course, he tricked me, but what is he playing at? Naruto let Haku sweat a little trying to figure out his little game, but after a moment of brain-racking he could tell the girl had no idea what he wanted, so instead of her asking something of him, he asked her. So who are you really, Haku-chan? He poked the girl in the stomach a couple times to get her attention. If you're strong enough to be a hunter nin at your age, then you've definitely got something going for you. Haku froze. Clearly it was an innocent question, but having lived as a missing nin for most of her life, it left her cautious. What do you mean, Naruto-san? Naruto frowned at her hesitation. Finally he sighed. Look, Haku, despite what you may think, we aren't enemies. An eyebrow rose at that proclamation. If I can find a way to keep us from fighting each other, I'd gladly go down that path, even if it's more difficult than just outright fighting you. Fighting is pointless unless you're doing it to protect. Haku shivered despite herself. That was dangerously close to her way of thinking. She could have pushed away from him, could have fought back, could have done a bunch of things, but something was making her trust him. Just him holding her was making her feel hot, like he was just radiating warmth and kindness. Despite herself, she started speaking shakily of her past, about how she had nearly been killed by her father after he killed their mother, of her meeting Zabuza, and of her ice power. When she had spoken of her use of Hyoden, Naruto froze. The hell, I thought Hyoden was extinct. I should be the only person who can use it. Kyuubi cut in. Did you forget that Kakashi said it was a bloodline of 2 clans? Since she's nothing like your mother or Mito, and judging by her story she can only be of the other clan, the Yuki clan, if that's the case that makes you, what? Distant cousins. Huh, one of your first true enemies, and it's a family member, go figure. Naruto frowned at that. Haku, do you remember the name of your clan? Did your mother ever speak of it? Haku looked up from her explanation to notice the frown on the boy's face. She felt uncomfortable under his scrutiny. She spoke of it only once so that I would understand my past. It was one of the last things she did before she died. The name, Haku. What was the name? He spoke a bit more forcefully. It was Yuki. She said fearfully at his tone, but relaxed when his face softened, though he still had an odd look on his face. Is something wrong, Naruto? Naruto relaxed his grip and spun the girl around in his arms. When they were face to face he enveloped her in a hug. Aside from the fact that the two of us are family, no. Everything is just fine. You could hear a slight whimper in his voice. Haku's eyes widened as she froze in his arms. Wah. The Uzumaki clan and the Yuki clan are related. It's the reason why I can use Hyoden Haku. If I were to guess, we'd be cousins. Naruto's voice hitched a couple times as he tried to grasp that he actually had some family left in this world. Haku meanwhile just stood there with the shaking boy holding on to her for dear life. So I was right. We are related, and he feels so vulnerable right now. She tentatively reached out her hands and returned the hug, which made the boy stiffen a bit. Haku frowned at that. That's an odd response to a hug, even if it wasn't expected. It's like he's not used to affection, or at least not from someone like me, and judging from the way he's acting towards me, he must have been an orphan as well. Naruto felt Haku's hands on his back and immediately tensed up. It wasn't like Anko hadn't hugged him like this over the years. It's just with so many emotions running through his head he hadn't expected her to return his affections quite so readily. A pat on the back. Sure. But to return his hug, even if it was half-hearted, filled him with hope. Now more than ever he had made up his mind to avoid the fight with Zabuza, but how? Haku-chan, he asked slowly. Haku looked up into the blonde's eyes and saw a curious look in his eyes. It was a calculating look she had seen many times over the years. You're trying to figure out a way for us to avoid fighting, right? Naruto nodded. Sigh. That is going to be difficult then. Zabuza has never been one to back down, especially if he's been beaten before by the one he's going up against. She sighed again. Not to mention Gato has something that Zabuza needs more than just about anything else. What could that scumbag have that Zabuza doesn't? Naruto's voice was filled with disgust, but he said almost as an afterthought. Money notwithstanding, of course. Information Naruto. Kun, she thought on the suffix for a second before nodding to herself. Kun would do just fine for him. I can understand your hatred for the man. I personally don't like him either, but he has information that can help Zabuza in his goals and I am his tool to help him achieve his goals. Naruto frowned when he heard Haku call herself a tool. She had said it so matter of fact, like it was just the way things were. Well, to hell with how things were. She was family, damn it, and like hell his family would be used by someone else. Haku, we may not be enemies, but speak about yourself like that again and I just may have to kill the man who put those thoughts into your head. He held the girl tighter, which shocked the ice mistress. The venom in his voice at such a simple thing made her shiver. You are not a tool, Haku. I don't care if you see yourself as one. I don't. And like hell I'm letting someone use my family and just discard them like one. Again Haku felt the warm feeling spread through her body. Just what was it that made her feel like this? The two of them sat down next to one of the trees Naruto had abused. Naruto had his arm around Haku's side, holding her close. Haku, if the only thing Gato has over your heads is information, why not just beat it out of him? From the description people gave me, the guy is a shimp even by shimp standards. Hell, one of our second-year academy students could probably kick his ass. Haku frowned. It's against Zabuza's policy, never harm the client unless they give you a reason. Most villages go by that standard. Naruto thought about that for a moment before a devious smile crossed Naruto's face. Then why not give Zabuza a reason? Haku raised an eyebrow. Just how would we do that? Naruto's smile grew wider, which made the corners of his eyes crinkle a little. Haku could only shiver. Most people in the world viewed Gato shipping and transport as a legitimate business, but underneath the clean exterior we see what it truly is, a corrupt and powerful corporation hell-bent on making as much money as possible, regardless of whose life they have to ruin or what country they have to cripple. We find the corporation's namesake sitting behind his desk going over documents that would, in essence, lay the final stone for his movement into the mainland. It was a grand scheme that would gain him even more power and influence in the elemental nations. However, before he could finalize any of it, a frantic knock came to his door. Enter, he growled, angry at the disturbance. A young thug rushed in, breathing hard. Sir, all of our men in the city are missing. What? Gato jumped up from his chair, slamming his hand on the table in front of him, several of his important papers flying off. That's not all, sir. Many of the operations in the village are at a standstill. The brothels and the protection money offices are destroyed. Send out the men and comb the village. Find whoever did this and end them. Gato stood up and grabbed his cane. Throwing on his coat he walked past the underling, his two samurai bodyguards Zori and Waraji falling into step behind him. Sir, where are you going? The underling asked. He turned to look back at the little pissant. I'm going to see Zabuza. Only a ninja could have pulled this clusterfuck off, and the only ninja I know of that are nearby are that team from Konoha and that asshole Zabuza. I'm just going to make sure which side he's on and to dangle a nice juicy carrot in front of his face if he isn't, before he walked out the door. Meanwhile, two shadows watched the short mon's departure. One a girl who was just staring at how easy this all was, and the other was a boy who was grinning like a loon. That was simple enough. Haku deadpanned. Naruto chuckled. Oh, that's nothing yet. I make breaking into Anbu headquarters and dumping itching powder into their uniforms an art form. Getting a stuck-up selfish bastard like Gato to second-guess himself is child's play. He tilted his head in her direction. You know your part in this, right, Haku? He flashed her one of his ear-to-ear grins, which had that wonderful warming effect on her and made her knees turn to jelly. She nodded quickly and using a mist shunshin, making her way back to their hideout. She had a part to play, and if she was going to spend time getting to know her family in the foreseeable future, she needed to make it believable. What took you so long, Haku? Zabuza growled. Spread prone on the bed in the middle of the room, it was really the only piece of furniture aside from the couch and dresser in the large cocoon-shaped hideout. I had a few errands to run, Zabuza-sama. She bowed her head slightly to the man. I picked the herbs needed to cure the temporary paralysis and… Well. A snide voice echoed around the two missing nin. Haku's face turned to one of distaste, since there was only one person she knew of that could be that pompous. Even if she knew he was coming, it didn't change the fact that she despised Gato. She turned to take in the man's appearance. He was wearing his casual suit today. Along with his cane he was as scummy looking as a crooked businessman could be. Any thoughts she had against double-crossing her client flew out the window in the face of the man's arrogance. He literally walked into the Mist Nin's hideout like he owned the place. Well, technically he did own the place, but that's besides the point. To think, this is how far the demon of the hidden mist has fallen. And they called you one of the best. Faye, praise wasted if you ask me. Gato walked forward with that shit-eating grin on his face. You couldn't even take care of one team from Konoha. Hell, most of them are snot-nosed brats. Makes me think you don't want the information I have, Zabuza. The Mist Nin narrowed his eyes at the corrupt businessman. He needed that information if he was going to fulfill his promise, and nothing was going to stand in his way. Just keep that info ready and waiting, Gato. I'll have that bridge builder's head on a platter soon enough. Gato snorted in amusement. You'd better. One more slip up and you'll be out on your asses. I've gone to a lot of effort keeping those hunter nin away from here. Prove to me that you're worth the trouble. He turned and walked away, a satisfied grin on his face. As the door to their hideout slammed closed, Zabuza let out a growl and slammed a hand down on the bed. That arrogant bastard. A few minutes of silence passed as the mind of the demon of the mist wandered. Zabuza-sama, Haku cut into his musings. Why don't we just torture Gato for the information? It wouldn't be hard. She looked at her mentor, who stared back at her with a calculating scowl. I know how easy it would be, but you know my rules. Don't harm the client unless provoked, and besides we may need his help later on. Zabuza sighed. Just deal with it a little longer, Haku. We'll kill him eventually. Maybe sooner than you think, a voice called out from the shadows of the room. Who's there? Zabuza growled, though Haku already knew who it was. Oh, you know. Naruto laughed as he presented himself to the missing nin. Naruto Uzumaki. So that's where you were, Haku. So, have you betrayed me? Is Kakashi outside somewhere, ready to bust in here and take my head? Zabuza actually looked hurt by asking those questions, which surprised Naruto a bit. Hardly, Haku admitted dryly. She turned to Naruto. Anything? Oh ho ho ho, yeah. Naruto pulled a tape recorder from one of the pockets in his shirt, having kept the thing in a scroll beforehand, seeing as it was useful for keeping notes or gathering information. He clicked the play button on the device and Gato's distinct voice was heard. And get those fools I paid earlier. The mercs, sir? A voice asked, most likely one of Gato's minions. Yeah, them. Zabuza is becoming more trouble than he's worth, and I'm getting tired of covering his ass. How are the mercs gonna kill him? He's a ninja. Asterisk. Even ninja get tired, fool. I'll just sick him on those Konoha shinobi. Best case scenario, they'll kill each other and I don't have to lift a finger, but if worst comes to worst I can just flood those weakened fools with disposable mercenaries. Asterisk. What about that info you were baiting him with? A curious voice asked. That report from Mizu. He. You know what, I think I'll tell him when I spit in the cocky bastard's face as the light leaves his eyes. Asterisk. Boss, that's cold. Asterisk. I don't pay you to sympathize, now get the fuck to work. The tape recorder clicked to a stop, leaving the room in an uncomfortable silence. Silence broken by the cracking of knuckles as Zabuza's hand clenched in fury. That no good lying Sanufa motherfucking bitch. Haku, change of plans, we're torturing that bastard and killing him now. He turned a glare at Naruto. As for you, what the hell do you want? Naruto smirked. To spend time with my cousin, of course. Zabuza's eyes widened a fraction at that statement. He glanced at Haku, who nodded. So you are related then? He mused, anger mellowing out at the revelation. Yep, Naruto said happily. The Yuki and Uzumaki are family. She may just be a cousin, but all the Uzumaki are gone and she's the only blood family I have left. So what's with that recording? Zabuza pointed to the device in question. Why are you helping me? Couldn't you have just spirited her away with you? Nah. Naruto waved him off. I'd never do that to anyone. I'm not a bleeding heart romantic. I may be a gentleman, but I don't go that far. That's not what I meant. Zabuza's sweat dropped. An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Okay, new topic. As for why I'm helping you, I'm killing two birds with one stone, figuratively speaking, of course. I knew Gato was a traitorous bastard. He just seemed like the chronic backstabbing kind of guy. Knowing him, he would have done this anyway even if I didn't piss him off by killing all his cronies in town. And judging by the way he had a bunch of fodder ready and waiting, I was right on the money. That doesn't explain anything, Zabuza growled. I'm getting to that, keep your panties out of a knot. Naruto scowled. Well, since you now know that Gato is even more of a piece of shit than before, you're most likely not going after Tazuna's head, correct? I mean, why kill the bridge builder when you're just gonna torture your client for the info anyway? Zabuza nodded once. Yeah, after Gato screwed the pooch on their deal, he reached the top of his shit list. Okay, well, that guarantees the safety of my client while at the same time gaining a temporary ally in protecting my client, seeing as your client is my client's main threat. The enemy of my enemy and all that bullshit. Zabuza frowned. Something wasn't right, something like this just didn't fit the kid's style, or what he knew of it. There was something more to this, he could feel it in his gut. That doesn't explain why you're doing this. He pointed out. Sure, protecting your client is an end and this could very well be the means, but that just doesn't fit. You wouldn't have convinced Haku otherwise. Why are you really here? Naruto chuckled. As I said before, I'm here to spend time with my cousin. Killing Gato is just a bonus. And personally, I don't want one of my family being hunted by Hunter Nin all her life. So I'm here to offer my protection to you and Haku. Since she's my family, she can join my clan as per the laws of Konoha, and seeing as she's your adopted daughter in a sense. He waved his hand back and forth in a wishy-washy manner. The offer extends to you as well. So you're bribing us with a tasty carrot and expecting us to hop to your tune. You're as bad as Gato. Zabuza grunted half-heartedly. Maybe so, Naruto chuckled. But I at least have noble intentions for you both, and I damn sure ain't gonna betray family. Family, huh? A far-off look crossed Zabuza's face for a moment. Naruto noticed a bit of pain on his face. Clearly he was remembering something better left unasked. Zabuza shook his head to clear those thoughts. Kid. Yeah, Zabuza sighed. We were going to attack Tazuna while he was working on the bridge. Bring your team and Tazuna there in 2 days' time, you'll have my answer then. Now get the hell out, I need my beauty sleep. Naruto nodded as he disappeared back in the darkness, a small chuckle escaping his lips. Ooh, I'm back, Naruto called out, walking in Tazuna's house, sweat dropping when he noticed the sliver of wood still lodged in the door from his blow-up. That was when Kakashi appeared out on nowhere, nearly scaring the pants off the blonde genin. We were worried, Naruto, where were you? There was concern in the monk's eyes. As he shuffled over to him on crutches, apparently he wasn't at full strength yet. Looking around, Naruto noticed everyone else was there as well. Naruto was debating whether or not to tell them what he'd been doing all day, but the prankster in him just couldn't resist seeing their reactions. Well, he started, sitting down at the living room table, the others joining him. Both Sakura and Sasuke looked exhausted. Sakura's hair was wet while Sasuke's was frayed, so he guessed that Kakashi had put them through the ringer on their elements or something to prepare them for Zabuza's return. Poor them, Zabuza's not the enemy anymore, he. A barely visible grin touched his face as he continued. After I blew up the other day, I went out to the woods to blow off some steam and train. That's it. You've been training all this time. Kakashi sounded disappointed for some reason. What else would he be doing normally? Well, that barely, their grin grew wide. That, and I took out all of Gato's men in the village, met up with and found out that the hunter Nin Haku is my cousin, got Zabuza to betray Gato, and he and Haku are going to meet us on the bridge in 2 days to see about joining Konoha. His smile grew even wider, making the corners of his eyes crinkle. Now, some things in this world can be bought with money. Other things with prestige and power. This was something no amount of money could buy, nor any amount of power or prestige could pay. The sight of Kakashi bug-eyed and twitching, Sakura and Sasuke just deadpan as all hell, and Tazuna, Tsunami and Inari all with their jaws on the floor was simply priceless. Life was good. Chapter 12. Of Respect and Explosions. Well, that went better than expected. Naruto chuckled, the black eye where Sakura had brained him throbbing mercilessly. Your own damn fault. Sasuke grunted, having witnessed the ass-kicking firsthand. He hadn't laughed that hard in years. Hell, Sakura had actually stopped punching Naruto to stare at the laughing Uchiha. Pushing those thoughts away, the two genin made their way to the bridge to guard Tazuna, Sure, Zabuza wasn't much of a threat anymore, but you could never count out the random thugs that Gato could send. Yo, old man. Naruto hailed him. Chizuna turned to face the two. Ah, Naruto, perfect timing. Could you give me a hand here? He pointed to a girder laying next to a pile of the things that had been singled out. A couple of my workers chickened out and I'm a bit undermanned. Sure. He walked over and was about to help him pick up the piece of metal, but then a thought hit him when he noticed only a few people around. Hey, old man, how many of your workers quit? Chizuna sighed. Is it that noticeable? Naruto nodded. Over half my team quit, 10 of them in all. Chizuna ran a hand through his hair. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Sure, I'm not being hunted by an A-class ninja anymore, but what good is that gonna be if I can't finish this bridge? Hey. No mopin', old man, I got this shit. Naruto brought his hands up in a familiar hand seal, and where once was one now stood 50 Naruto clones. So what do you need moved? The clones all asked in unison. Now Chizuna was expecting the blonde to help him, since from the very moment he met the kid he always felt that helpful energy that he exuded in buckets. It was one of the reasons he wasn't scared of the kid despite the fear he had felt when Naruto had blown up in Inari's face. But this was just ridiculous. He had seen the technique before during the fight with Zabuza, but using them to do manual labor. It was a ridiculous plan, but despite hearing the boys talk in stereo, just couldn't stop a smile forming on the Mon's face. I got several things you kids can do. Ooh. Sakura followed along behind Tsunami as they made their way to the market to buy groceries for dinner tonight, preparing themselves for the meeting with Zabuza tomorrow. It's so sad around here. Sakura sighed, looking around at all of the people around her. Most were sleeping in wooden lean-tos or in broken-down shacks. Tsunami, who had been quiet for most of the walk, looked over her shoulder at the young Kunoichi. It's why my father is so driven to finish the bridge. It's the only thing that will break Gato's grasp on our country. Sakura and Tsunami walked in silence for a little bit longer as the streets started to come closer together. It was slightly intimidating how the buildings funneled like that. The number of homeless people dropped off and several unsavory-looking thugs took their place. This is the way to the market. Seems a bit dangerous, don't you think? Sakura hissed to Tsunami. It's not usually this bad, she admitted. Normally it's just one or two of them and there's more people walking around. I wonder why it's changed. Concern laced her voice as the thugs around them eyed the two women with various looks of lust or greed. Just keep going. We'll reach the market road in just a second, she whispered. Sakura nodded and the two sped up slightly, making their way to the end of the street. Several of the thugs fell into place behind them, prompting the two speed up a bit. They were only a dozen yards from the end of the road when a big burly man stepped out from one of the alleyways along the road. Well, wa do we Avenue Air? The thug slurred. He was clearly intoxicated if the smell of alcohol on his breath was anything to go by. The man grinned, showing off many missing teeth as he stalked a bit closer, causing both women to look up at the man. He literally towered over the two ladies at about a head or two taller than Tsunami. With the muscles to back up his mass, he formed an imposing wall between the thugs behind them and the safety of the main road. Now wa ya two ladies doin' out air? You cool ge-ert. The man flashed a lecherous grin at the two girls, who narrowed their eyes at the man. If it was one thing they despised equally, it was a lecherous pervert who wouldn't think twice about raping someone. Sakura's mind was racing as she tried to figure a way out of this mess. She glanced past the main thug and noticed that they weren't but maybe a 10-second run from the main road. A plan formed quickly in the Kunoichi's mind. Tsunami-san, when I tell you to run for the main road and escape into the crowd, all right? Tsunami nodded fearfully. The two women inched closer to the main road, eyeing the thugs warily. Apparently the big thug didn't like that and scowled at them. Where the hell you think you're going? He growled, approaching the women. Now, Sakura yelled, using chakra in her legs to propel herself forward to land a chakra-enhanced punch to the tough's stomach. It wasn't anything close to what Tsunade could pull off, but it got the job done as the man bent over in the waist in pain. A blur to Sakura's right told her that Tsunami had made a run for it. Don, just stand here. After her, the big man yelled at his cronies, gasping for air a bit. The thugs rushed off after Tsunami, but Sakura was having none of that. She grabbed 5 shuriken from her pouch and launched them at the retreating men. With a cry of pain, both men hit the ground as the razor-sharp metal bit into tender flesh. 2 in one bandit and 3 in the other, all of them biting into the back of their legs or ass. With a sigh, Sakura turned back to the big man just in time to catch a meaty fist to the face. A gout of blood flew from her nose as she landed in a heap against a crate. "You bitch, you'll pay for dat." The man straightened back up, cracking his knuckles angrily. Sakura spat a glob of blood from her mouth. Her lip was busted and clearly her nose was broken as it bent to the side slightly. However, she fought through the tears to rise back to her feet, quickly rolling to the side to dodge the punch that broke the crate she landed against. Grabbing a kunai during the roll, she flicked the weapon towards the thug. However, unlike the other two, the big one seemed to know how to fight, albeit rather poorly, as he knocked the weapon out of the air with his fist. He none da now ya air. He chuckled darkly, approaching the injured girl. Sakura was still reeling from the punch when the thug landed a punch to her stomach. She could feel her bones creak under the force of that blow. Whoever the bastard was, he clearly had a decent grasp on brawling. Coupled with his massive size, the blows he threw had some weight behind them. He struck her in the jaw next, loosening several teeth. "Ya feel like fine now, girly?" He grinned evilly, picking her up by her throat. Sakura chalked as the meat hook of a hand cut off her air. One of her eyes was closed shut from a punch and the other was black and blue, but she could see the man's face clearly, and what she saw scared her more than anything. The man had a hungry look in his eyes, and a wicked smile that could peel paint if he so much as glanced at it. She knew what the man planned, and at that moment she felt more scared than she had ever felt in her life. Desperately she struggled against his grip, but he held her hands away without much effort. "Go ahead and squeal, ain't no un gonna save ya," he breathed huskily in her ear. Sakura's one good eye widened in fear. Knowing something and hearing it firsthand sent a new shiver of horror through her body. The thug slammed her into the ground roughly. He let go of throat but kept her hands pinned to the side. With one hand he began fumbling with the button of his pants. Sakura let out a whimper as he grumbled, "Shoo it, I'll get to ya in a sec." He lowered his head to get a better look at why the button wasn't coming undone. That would be his undoing. Reacting on fear and instinct, Sakura began gathering chakra to her throat, molding it into water element chakra. When the thug finally got the button undone, he looked back up. "Alright, time fair some foo." His sentence was cut off as a bullet of condensed water hit him right in the eye. With a shower of blood, the man screamed out, letting go of Sakura and rearing back on his haunches. Sakura reacted quickly, adrenaline pumping wildly through her fear-filled mind as she quickly got to her feet. With a roar of anger, she lanced out the most powerful kick she could in her condition right to the man's jewels. Despite the loss of his eye, the man could only double over in agony as he felt his nuts crush under the vicious assault. As he bent forward to grab himself, he caught Sakura's chakra-enhanced knee right to the nose. A sharp crack filled the air as the man hit the ground, Sakura panting and shivering over him as the adrenaline slowly left her. She looked at her hands quietly, wondering if she had just killed the man. That thought made her hands shake slightly, almost imperceptibly. The man twitched suddenly and groaned in pain, bringing Sakura back to the present as she flinched at the noise and looked around desperately for something to defend herself. There, only a few feet away, was the kunai the man had swatted away. Shaking fingers closed around cold metal as she approached her assaulter, staring down with a look of indifference at the helpless man. No, not helpless. He was still a threat, both physically and mentally. She looked from the blade to the man several times, her breath coming in short gasps. She closed her eyes. Sakura stumbled out onto the main road, walking as quickly as she could back to Tezuna's house, a bloody kunai in her hand. Kakashi sat quietly reading his book with that same look of boredom he wore for everything short of a fight. It wasn't that he was actually bored, no. That was simply a way to throw people off, make people relax or not take him seriously. The Ika just made that task easier. Most people would look at him funny, in a, "how dare you," kind of way, but again, it was unexpected for someone like that to be a trained assassin, and that was exactly how Kakashi preferred it, unexpected. But that's not important. What was important, at least to the cycloptic Jonin, was the shrimp on the roof who was doing his best to imitate Sasuke when he was in one of his moods. Naruto's mental ass beating of Inari's views on life weren't taken too well by the boy. He had spent most of the past few days just staring out at the sea. In fact, it was beginning to creep the masked man out a bit, and that's saying something. Kakashi snapped his book closed and sighed. it wouldn't do to let the boy stew over things for too much longer. So, with a determined sigh, the man made his way to the roof of the house where the boy sat alone. You know, in my personal experience, it's not good to dwell on things like this. Inari ignored the greeting and continued to stare off into space. Well, aren't you a ray of sunshine? The Jonin deadpanned, taking a seat next to the boy. The two sat quietly, just watching the sparkles out on the water, watching the seagulls fly lazily around and every so often dive bombing after a fish or some other marine animal. Does it ever get better? Kakashi raised an eyebrow, glancing over at the boy, whose question was barely heard even by Kakashi's sensitive ears. After a moment to see if he would ask anything else, Kakashi sighed. Well. He began, looking up at the clouds above, a calm expression on his face. Yes and no, I guess, would be the correct answer to that. Inari tilted his head slightly in the Jonin's direction, eyebrows furrowed questioningly. Yes, in that over time, the pain will subside. It doesn't matter how bad it hurts. The old proverb, time heals all wounds, is quite accurate. The Jonin sighed again, and know that despite being healed, there will always remain a scar. How deep that scar depends on how bad the wound, but know this, Inari, and take it from someone who has lost loved ones not just once, but multiple times. Scars, no matter how deep, are there to remind us about our mistakes. He lifted his headband up to show the young boy the scar over his left eye, then lowered it once the boy got a good look at it. I got that scar from an enemy ninja during the war. It was a foolish mistake on my part that ended up taking the life of one of my comrades. He was a dear friend to me, and even now I dwell on his death. Inari was about to ask something, but Kakashi cut him off. Dwelling on the death of someone and paying your respects to the person who saved your life at the cost of their own is not the same as dwelling on someone's death and letting that death rule you, letting it rule the way you think, act or treat others. Hell, I'm guilty of all three at times, but I still try to get past it. I don't allow it to rule me. Inari lowered his head in thought. He, however, flinched slightly when Kakashi's hand landed on his head to ruffle his hair a bit. Facing your problems is a big part of growing up, kid. Adults can be guilty of running away, but it's a mark of maturity when you man up and deal with things head on. Naruto is a good example. For most of his young life he cried. Inari looked up in shock. Kakashi nodded. Yes, for the first 5 years of his life he was quite the crybaby. It wasn't until Naruto found himself lost in the village festival celebrating one of our village's greatest heroes that he started to change. It wasn't a gradual change, I can tell you that much. What happened? Inari asked. Kakashi looked at him for a moment. Well, he had hid himself in a building across the street from a reenactment of the many battles of our fourth Hokage, a man as much myth and legend as flesh and blood. Naruto watched for hours, taking in everything that those performers said and did like it was scripture to him. It changed him. He decided then and there to live his life like the fourth Hokage, to live by the will of fire and his ninja way. You could see a small smirk under the mon's mask. And as far as I know he's never cried after that, not one time. The two sat in a comfortable silence as they watched the ocean. A few minutes went by when Inari stood up, eyes filled with determination. Fine then, Inari growled. If that blonde idiot can do it, so can I. Kakashi beamed at the boy. He really was quite like Naruto in some ways. All he needed was a push in the right direction. Hey, is that Mom? Inari asked suddenly, turning to point towards the road that led to town. What's she doing home so early? It's usually 2 hours before she gets back. Kakashi didn't answer. He leapt off the roof and landed in a crouch, concern on his face. Sakura wasn't with her and she was running back here. A dozen thoughts ran through his mind at that moment, none of them good. Help! Tsunami screamed, when she was close enough to the Jonin. Tsunami-san, what happened? He was dead serious as the woman came up to him, breathing heavily and trying to catch her breath. She quickly described what happened to the man, whose one eye widened. Get inside and lock the doors, I'll be back as soon as I can. Before he took off to find his student, praying that she was all right. It was a few minutes later when he came across Sakura, limping her way down the road, using a stick she had found as a crutch. Sakura! Kakashi yelled, landing in front of the girl who, upon seeing the Jonin, collapsed in his arms. Kakashi used what little medical chakra he knew to run a scan over her body, 2 cracked ribs, a broken nose and several contusions on the chest and face. Whoever did this is going to die, painfully. The Jonin was seething in anger, so much so he almost missed the slight whimper. Looking down at Sakura, he saw that she was crying. He sat there soothing the girl by stroking her hair gently, waiting for her to calm down. When she had stopped shaking, he asked gently, "What happened?" They sat like that for several minutes as Sakura cried, trying her best to tell him what happened. Kakashi's blood boiled when she said the thug had tried to rape her, but that quickly turned cold when he noticed the bloody kunai gripped tightly in her fist, the knuckles of her hand bone white, holding onto that weapon like a lifeline. "Sakura," he asked quietly, "did you kill him?" The way the girl froze in his grasp spoke volumes. Her spine was arrow straight under his hand. "Don't worry," he soothed. "I'm here, just let it out." He ran his hand along her back as fresh tears sprang to the girl's eyes. She buried her face into his chest and soaked the thin material there in seconds. It was almost 10 minutes later when Kakashi realized that she had cried herself to sleep, the injuries she had sustained and exhaustion taking its toll. Slowly, so as not to aggravate her wounds, he picked the girl up and brought her back to the house where he could patch her up with what little medical knowledge he had. "Ooh, Kakashi-sensei, we're back," Naruto yelled loudly as the 2 genin and Tazuna walked in the door. "Let the whole country know we're here next time, idiot," Sasuke scoffed. "Shut up, duckhead. Nice comeback, real original." Sasuke rolled his eyes as they sat down at the living room table. "Why's it so quiet? And where is everyone?" Naruto looked around, seeing that no one was around and the house was surprisingly quiet. They're probably just out shopping or something," Tazuna grumbled, taking a sip from his sake bottle. "That's hardly the case, I'm afraid," a voice said from the stairs. The 3 turned to see Kakashi coming down the stairs. "What do you mean by that, Kakashi?" Naruto asked, raising an eyebrow at how tense the man seemed. The eerie feeling that filled the room set them on edge. "What happened?" he asked quietly. Kakashi sighed. This wasn't going to go over very well with the blonde. "Sakura." Naruto tensed at his teammate's name being spoken in such a broken way, like something awful had befallen her, and truth be told it did. She was attacked earlier and was nearly raped and killed. Kakashi knew that was a bad thing to say, but saying it any other way would have just pissed the blonde off more. He suddenly felt the temperature of the room plummet and watched in slight fear as the genin's eyes turned icy. Naruto's voice at that moment seemed to match his eyes in their coldness. Who was it? It wasn't a question from a student to a teacher. It was a demand, and the way the blonde said it sent an unconscious shiver up the Jonin's spine. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Some random thug off the streets is what she told me." Naruto just nodded once before he stood up and walked to the door. "Naruto, where are you going?" he voiced quickly, turning the blonde from his warpath of destruction. "What's it look like I'm doing? I have scum to find and deal with," he growled in barely controlled rage as a slight bit of Kyuubi's chakra leaked into his voice. He turned once again to walk away. "Wait, Naruto," Kakashi yelled after him. Naruto stopped but didn't turn around this time. "What is it, Kakashi?" Naruto's voice was calm and even, but the air around him was charged with negative emotions, as several cracks of chakra discharged in the air. "You can't kill the man that attacked Sakura." Naruto spun on his heels to give Kakashi a glare that could melt steel. "Why?" he demanded. "Because he's already dead." Naruto's eyes widened, the slight red tinge to his eyes disappearing instantly, and the air began to warm. "Did you?" he asked. "No," Kakashi sighed. A look of understanding crossed the boy's face. "Where is she?" "Upstairs in her room," he replied quickly. "She hasn't moved since I put her there. She was a bit beat up, but I dealt with most of it with the meager medical knowledge I have." A slight nod was the only confirmation the Jonin received. "Come on, Sasuke," the blonde growled. "Why?" Sasuke looked at Naruto curiously. "Because Sakura just made her first kill." It seemed like the most obvious thing in the world. "Sue," was the only response. "Sue, what do you think she's feeling right now, huh?" "I felt like scum after I killed someone, and I know for a fact you haven't killed anyone yet, but you have experienced something as traumatic, or don't you remember?" Naruto looked back at him with the same expression. Sasuke paled slightly as suppressed memories of the massacre started creeping their way to the front of his mind. Fine, let's go, he grumbled, pushing past the other genin roughly, muttering to himself. Naruto glanced over his shoulder at Kakashi, who nodded slightly to him. Taking that as approval, he walked upstairs to join his two teammates. The two boys stood in front of Sakura's door warily. They couldn't hear anything at all, which is what was putting them on edge. Naruto was the first one to the door handle. With a twist and a push they were in the room, which they almost immediately regretted. Even to Sasuke's senses you could tell something was wrong. To Naruto's senses it was much, much worse. Sadness, regret, anger, helplessness were just some of the few emotions he could pick up, but that wasn't all. On top of all that were tears, a small bit of vomit and sweat which assaulted his nose. All in all, it looked, felt and smelled like someone had just gone through a shocking and damaging experience, which, to be perfectly honest, was exactly what happened. Sakura was curled up in the corner of the room, a trash can next to her as she stared blankly at the wall beside her. She was so out of it she didn't even realize someone had entered the room. Naruto and Sasuke shared a glance. Naruto's was an, "I told you," look, while Sasuke's was more along the lines of, "Shut up, I get it already." The two crept up on the girl, making a bit of noise so as not to startle her too much. Sakura tensed when she felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned slightly to stare right into Naruto's deep cerulean eyes. Without a word, Sakura launched herself into Naruto, knocking the air out of him as the pinkett sobbed into his shirt. Naruto rubbed the girl's back gently, letting her cry, letting her vent all her frustrations and fears. Naruto looked over Sakura's shoulders at Sasuke, who was standing there impassively, not quite sure what to do at that moment. Naruto solved that problem, however, with a slight glare and nod towards Sakura. With a sigh, the last Uchiha joined in the hug and tried with his limited empathy to impart some positivity to the girl. They sat like that for the entire evening and long into the night. Kakashi had brought the three of them food, and with a warm meal in their stomach the three turned in for the night. Normally he would have separated them. Boys and girls separate simply for propriety's sake, but seeing the three huddled together like that. Naruto with an intense expression on his face even in sleep, Sasuke with a peaceful for once expression instead of his broody scowl, and Sakura's small smile, which filled the Jonin with hope. Normally a first kill like what happened to Sakura was an immensely traumatic experience, but seeing those expressions on each of their faces left little doubt in his mind that his team had just taken a huge step forward in their bond. It wasn't just camaraderie or a friendship of convenience, this was a bond that would prove to be much deeper than that. At least he hoped so. Naruto, Sasuke and Kakashi walked towards the bridge, bodies slightly tense due to the situation. After all, today was the planned meeting and they'd be lying if they said they weren't at least a little bit on edge. Sakura had stayed back at the house with Tsunami and Inari. Naruto, in a stroke of brilliance, at least by his canon self's standards, left a small army of clones to guard the house and keep Sakura company. She was still a little shaken up by the attempted rape and her first kill, but after sleeping with the comfort of both her teammates next to her, she was at least able to have small conversations with people. The two genin and one jonin arrived at the bridge to find it covered in mist. "Glad to see you finally showed up, we've been waiting an hour." Zabuza growled as he walked from the mist, arms crossed with a small twitch to his eyebrows, Haku following just slightly behind him. "Naruto-kun." Haku nodded to the blonde. "Haku-chan." He nodded back. Zabuza looked between the two of them. "Well, aren't you two a pair?" Kakashi held up his hand to get the other jonin's attention. "Let's cut to the chase, Zabuza. What is your decision? Are you joining Konoha or not?" Zabuza turned to the man, flashed an irritated glare, before that softened into a sigh. "Before I answer that, I need to talk with the brat over there." He nudged his head towards the blonde in question. Kakashi eyed the man warily, a little tense at the whole situation, but agreed to the monk's wishes. "Go ahead, Naruto. What is it?" he asked the taller man, which was an understatement, to be honest. Even with Naruto's height upgrade he still stood several heads shorter than the giant of a man. "I'll just put this bluntly. I don't trust you, kid, not you or your team." He raised a hand up to calm Naruto's teammates. "Haku, however, trusts you more than I find healthy in my line of work, therefore I'm willing to give you the benefit of a doubt, but..." The mist jonin trailed off almost like he didn't want to be here, and in some ways he didn't. Mingling with people was never really his style. He was more the stabby-cutty-dead kind of person, and that kind of behavior usually didn't make for good conversation. Naruto stared at the hesitation curiously. But, he drawled out. But, I have one solution. Haku trusts you, I don't. The reason I don't is because I'm basically putting my life in your hands. Zabuza eyed him dangerously. Not your team's hands either. Fuck no. You extended the invitation, you're the one responsible for us. So what is this solution then? Naruto asked. Simple. You validate Haku's trust in your capable care. Zabuza pointed to Haku, who nodded as well, both understanding the meaning since they had discussed the idea between them for the last 2 days. Meaning? Naruto pressed, clearly in the dark about the whole situation. Zabuza snorted. You fight, what else? Naruto's sweat dropped slightly at the sarcastic response. Oh, okay, and how does that make you trust me? Simple, that mask she wears isn't just for show, she took it off a Kiri hunter that she defeated in one of her first tastes of combat. You beat her and you can beat anything from Anbu down. That's enough power in my book to keep just about any asshole off your back, and it's one of the things I can truly respect and trust, power. How shallow of you. Naruto chuckled nervously as the man gave him a death glare. I said one of the things I respect and trust, and doubting my sincerity is one of the things I hate. He gave the boy a look that said, don't piss me off anymore or I'll stab you. Naruto gulped slightly and nodded. So how are we doing this? A duel, nothing more, nothing less. Almost as an afterthought her spoke airily, though this will be full contact. At Naruto's questioning look he explained, she may trust you but she trusts me more, she won't be pulling any punches, so try and take this seriously, or you'll die. Naruto nodded slightly, still not too happy about how things were going. He was doing all of this so he didn't have to fight his cousin, but such was life. He sighed once more, but suddenly Naruto grabbed his head for a moment. What is it, Dobi? Sasuke asked, noticing his teammate's strained face. Oh, nothing, he replied, releasing his head. Just a couple of Gato's thugs at Tazuna's house, don't worry, my clones took care of them. Sasuke nodded, as Naruto walked toward Haku. Naruto, you don't have to do this. Kakashi tried to say, but Naruto brushed him off. Yeah, I do. He sighed, taking his place across from Haku near the center of the uncompleted bridge. The two teens stared each other down, one calmly acceptant of the situation, the other slightly annoyed. Naruto-kun, I'm sorry about all this. The young ice mistress began, her tone calm and even despite her apology. Don't worry about it, he waved it off. Let's just do this thing. He turned back to Zabuza for a second. No kid gloves, right? We use everything we got. At the nod he reached into his pocket and retrieved a single Ryu coin. Well then, let's dance. He flicked the coin into the air and stared directly into Haku's eyes. The staring contest continued as the shiny piece of metal spun in the air. Spinning. Not once did they blink. Spinning. Hands inching towards their respective weapons. Spinning. The two smiled. Shink. Naruto rushed forward, drawing a kunai and throwing it in one fluid motion. In response, Haku threw several senbon, knocking the kunai off target. One of the senbon flew past the metallic exchange, nearly skewered Naruto in the forehead, but a slight tilt of the head let the senbon fly wide, only slightly nicking him on the cheek, which healed almost immediately due to his tenant's meddling. Haku ducked the first punch Naruto launched as he reached her, going into a sweep kick to try and knock the blonde off his feet. Naruto jumped to avoid the attack and lanced a foot forward, which was blocked by crossed arms, sending the ice mistress flying back a few feet to land in a crouch, one hand in front of her acting as a balance as she threw more senbon his way. Naruto hopped back from the barrage as the thin slivers of metal stuck into the concrete where he last had been, demonstrating their sharpness and the reason it was a bad idea to get hit with one. How the hell it stuck into solid concrete was beyond him, but he clearly didn't want to find out. Glancing up, Naruto's eyes widened as he bent backward, ducking the kick aimed for his throat. Flipping backwards, he put some distance between the two of them. The two were slightly out of breath from the exchange, but the grin on Naruto's face and the small smile on Haku's betrayed the fact at just how much the both of them were actually enjoying the duel. You got some nice moves, Haku-chan. He chuckled. As do you, Naruto-kun. She giggled into the hem of her robe, the sensual laugh sending a shiver through the blonde's body. Where the hell did that come from? The genin wondered. Dodging another Senbon brought him back to his sense. Fight now, sexy later. He pulled another kunai and the two met in a clash of metal, one holding said kunai, the other blocking with a single Senbon. How it was doing that without bending he didn't know, but chakra had to be involved. Well, now this is an interesting place to be in, Naruto-kun. Naruto raised an eyebrow. And just what do you mean by that? We're both evenly matched. Ah, but you only have the use of one hand. She raised her hand in a single hand sign. While I only need one hand. She started flipping through one-handed seals. Shit, Naruto mentally moaned. I hate one-handed seals, oh well. He threw a little grin at his opponent before going into one-handed seals as well, which made Haku's eyes widen. Now it was simply a race to see who finished their seals first. Haku finished slightly ahead of Naruto, as she slammed a foot into a puddle of water that had formed from all the mist around them. The droplets flying through the air formed into deadly-looking needles. Hidden Jutsu. 1,000 Needles of Death. The ice user leapt back as the slivers of water descended towards their target. Naruto finished his last seal a moment after Haku. Water release. Water encampment wall, as he breathed out a torrent of water that surrounded him in a thick shell of liquid. Needles met wall in a clash of water. The two jutsu of equal power fought for dominance before they simply cancelled each other out, the needles dispersing into mist as the wall collapsed into a puddle at the genin's feet. Impressive, Haku observed as the water from the two jutsu spread out along the ground. Hey, one of the few B-rank jutsu I know of right now, so it better damn well be. Naruto chuckled at that before he went back into his taijutsu stance. Haku did the same. The two clashed again. This time Naruto drew his ninja to try and get some reach on the woman who seemed to love Senbon to an insane degree. Something tells me Haku and Tenten are going to get along great together. Naruto chuckled to himself. Haku saw how the added foot and a half of blade was affecting her as the blonde's blade nicked her arms several times during the exchange. I guess I have to use that jutsu after all. I just hope I don't hurt him too much. Flying through several hand signs again, she slammed her hands down into a puddle of water and shouted. Ice release. Shattering ice spear. Naruto's eyes widened as the water around him shot up, almost instantly freezing into jagged spears, and were it not for his training with Anko, particularly the exploding kunai dodging practice, he most likely would have been skewered right then and there. Thankfully he was able to dodge most of them. However, one of them ripped a tear in the back of his pants, revealing the bushy tail he had stuffed inside. Watching from the sidelines, Zabuza choked out incredulously, he has a tail. Yes, Zabuza, he does, Kakashi replied, though he is a bit sensitive about it, so I wouldn't bring it up unless it's something positive, because sometimes he even scares me with some of the crap he does. Zabuza gave his fellow Jonin a funny look. I'm not joking. During the genin test he and his teammates captured and knocked me unconscious. It may have just been a test, but most of the initial planning and trap work was all Naruto. He may be a genin, but he's got the balls of a jonin, I can tell you that much. Zabuza snorted in amusement. I knew I liked that kid for a reason. He's making it awfully tempting to just join you guys, but I don't go back on things like this. It just isn't my style. Plus these two are really enjoying themselves, wouldn't you say? Kakashi nodded, a little smile on his lips. Yeah, I've never seen Naruto go all out on someone, and while this isn't nearly his limits, Haku-san is definitely pushing him. Haku meanwhile was unceremoniously fangirling up a storm. He has a tail. So cute. She couldn't keep the blush off her face as she noticed the furry appendage twitch slightly as the two cousins stared each other down. Naruto on the other hand was a bit pissed off. Those were my good shorts, damn it. Oh well, cat's out of the bag I guess. He noticed the reddened cheeks of his opponent and couldn't help the grin that graced his lips. Apparently she has the same thing for my tail as Hinata does. She has good taste then. Kyuubi nodded sagely. You humans always forget how wonderful a tail can be, so soft and fuzzy. A little perverse giggle echoed in his mind. Why do I get the feeling that you have the same thing for tails as, you know what, never mind. Don't ask, don't tell. Faye, you know you want some of this sweet. Don't ask, don't tell. He cut the connection just to make sure he wasn't distracted any more than he already was. He really didn't want to catch one of those ice spear things in the jewels. That would be unpleasant. Despite what she was feeling, Haku knew she had to bring out the big guns if she was to get Zabuza to acknowledge her cousin as a competent caretaker. I'm sorry Naruto-kun, but this is probably going to hurt a lot. Flashing through several hand signs, she brought her hands together in a strange seal that Naruto had never seen before. Almost immediately the air around him began to cool. Ice release. Demonic ice mirrors. A chill went up Naruto's spine as his vision became distorted. He quickly looked around and noticed the same thing all around him. It didn't cover completely, but the dome of rectangle-like objects had effectively sealed him inside. Looking back to Haku, he could see the woman on the other side of the ice. He could only guess. Haku walked forward and stepped inside the ice mirror, seemingly becoming part of it. The clearness of the walls around him turned opaque, allowing him to see the extent of what surrounded him. It wasn't good. Haku's image flickered into being around him, reflected between the mirrors. I hope you are ready for this, Naruto-kun. This is my ultimate technique. A single twitch was the only warning Naruto had. With a blinding speed, a dozen Senbon lodged their way into the cement mere centimeters from his foot. He raised his eyebrows. Damn, that was fast. I couldn't even keep track of it. Let's try this then. A quick flurry of hand signs and a sharp inhale and exhale later. Fire release. Great fireball technique. The abnormally large ball of flames ate at the mirrors in front of him, their wickedly hot tendrils powered by Naruto's massive chakra reserves. When the flames cleared, the ice had melted somewhat, but Naruto's eyes widened when the ice started reforming. It wasn't supposed to do that. He had never gotten his ice to do that before. Fire doesn't work on my ice no matter how hot it gets, Naruto-kun. She giggled slightly at the blank look on Naruto's face. Does my technique impress you that much, Naruto-kun? The hell it does. I've never been able to repair my ice abilities once they were set in motion like this. Truly you are a master of your element, Haku-chan. He threw her a little salute which gave the blonde-haired genin the satisfaction of seeing her cheeks turn a wonderful shade of rosy red. Flattery won't help you, Naruto-kun. Perhaps not, but this might. Taking in a quick breath, he flew through several seals again and exhaled. This time the flames were much hotter. Lava release. Molten spray. And unlike last time, the molten chunks of lava stuck to the ice, which hissed in protest, melting much quicker. Haku's eyes widened. Another bloodline. Just how many can he use? She adjusted the chakra flow to her mirrors to boost the strength and regeneration of them, but it wasn't without effort. She had to finish this soon or else she'd run out of chakra. Sorry, Naruto-kun, but this is going to hurt for you. A small glint of steel reflected in the mirrors as Haku let loose a barrage of pointy doom at Naruto. He cut the chakra to his technique and leapt back. Ah! He cried out as several Senbon still managed to strike him in his left leg. He stared down at the metal spikes lodged in the limb. They weren't hitting anywhere important, but the slightly numb feeling he had told a different story. Damn it, she nicked one of my pressure points. This isn't good. I can barely move my leg. Alarms of warning blared in his head as he leapt back, a half-dozen Senbon stabbing into the ground where he had been. Not slowing down, are we, Naruto-kun? You could hear the gentle goading in her voice. A tick mark appeared on Naruto's head. The hell is she getting cocky for? That does it. I need an out. He flew through several hand seals and slapped the ground quickly. Earth release. Earth dome. Twin half circles of concrete rose up from the bridge, slamming closed over Naruto's body, stopping the barrage of Senbon that he could hear slamming into the dome's side. That won't stop me, Naruto-kun. And true to her word, several Senbon broke through the dome to strike the ground next to him, the points of the needles glowing a bright green color. Fuck. Wind chakra. Naruto slammed his hands to the rock and pushed as much fire chakra as was acceptable into the dome, superheating it but keeping the rock solid. The next volley of Senbon bounced off the sides of the dome, to the chagrin of the thrower. He breathed a sigh of relief. He could hear Haku let out a huff of annoyance as she saw her weapons fail to penetrate. That still doesn't fix my problem of being stuck in here, and just waiting her chakra out is such a bitch way out of the fight. Outlasting an opponent is not the ninja way. Gotta strike with deception and fuck. He yanked his hand back as he had been unconsciously channeling more fire chakra through his hands into the stone, the rock beginning to get hot, even for him. I'm lucky this shit doesn't melt or shatter on me. It would suck if Haku used some ice jutsu on this thing just to blow at you. Wait. Oh ho 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 ho, now there's an idea. Naruto held out one of his hands and channeled a minuscule amount of chakra into a small point in the ground below him. Using a half-tiger sign, he activated the chakra in the cement floor and a small pop answered. Looking down, he noticed the pock mark in the cement where his chakra had blown a hole in the ground. Haha, success. Wait, what the hell did you do? Kyuubi poked in, noticing the strange flux of power from her container. Oh, not much, just coming up with a bitchin' plan to defeat Haku. How so? She questioned, a genuine interest tinting her voice. Well, he started. I noticed back when the old man let me look at the Uchiha library that there was this special Kekkei Genkai nature unique to Iowa, called Explosion Release. This Kekkei Genkai allows the user to channel their chakra into an object and or send their chakra out in an explosive release. So what? That still doesn't mean anything as long as you're stuck inside this. Oh, you devious little bastard, how the hell did you ever figure that out? You never learned Explosion Release. Yep, that's the plan, and honestly, I just went through several combinations of nature chakra until it felt right, mixing it just so, then infusing it into the stone. It's not Explosion Release per se, more like a bastardized version until I can get the mixture of natures right. Now watch and learn. Q. Watch and learn. Muahahaha. Placing a hand on the dome for a moment, he cut all elemental chakra flow from it, canceling the fire chakra that was keeping the wind Senbon from coming through, and in its place he poured in an obscene amount of Explosion Release chakra. Here's hoping I don't blow us all to hell. He took his palms off the stone, the very matter humming with power as he slapped the ground, once more raising a dome within the first. However, this one was far thicker and nearly 3 times as dense as the first. It took a lot out of him, but he'd never admit to it, giving one last prayer to Kami and sending chakra to all of his senses to dampen them, a little trick he'd picked up from Anko, before lowering his head between his knees and kissing his ass goodbye, using a single hand seal to activate the explosion before the world turned white. Outside the domes and oblivious to everything was Haku, who stared intently at the rocky formation with interest. That is until the stone began to hum with barely controlled power, which then turned to outright fear. Before that fear was replaced by pain, as the world turned white. "Boom," said the giant ass explosion that probably would even impress Deidara. Speaking of which, somewhere in the land of Earth, Aku, Deidara wiped his nose with his Akatsuki robes. Someone must have made a great work of art and I missed it, damn it. He held a single finger to his chin in thought. I wonder if we can share ideas. Yeah. We don't have time for this. Whoever this person is, we can find them later. The low, smooth voice of Sasori called from the shadows. Let's go. We need to find our contact. All right. Deidara nodded, following behind the hunched Sasori. But whoever it is just blasted someone straight to hell, I can guarantee that. Yeah. Back with Naruto, Ground Zero. Smoke. That was all anyone could see after the brilliant flash of light and sound. Then when the smoke cleared, only a crater was visible, with a smoking and still sizzling Naruto sprawled out with little swirlies in his eyes. He coughed once and a ring of smoke floated lazily from his mouth. Remind me not to do that again, ever, he groaned. Quote. For once the fox was speechless. She looked over the damages to the boy's body, and aside from the minor burns and a few minor busted blood vessels from the shockwave, he was in relatively good shape. You are so fucking lucky, I can't even begin to describe it. Tell me about it. I think I might have packed a bit too much juice into that. He looked around, surveying the damages. It wasn't pretty. All around him in a circle was a crater in the bridge about twice as wide as the dome was. A few places the blast had blown through the concrete and left holes in the thing. Tazuna is going to kill me. He sighed. Just use an earth jutsu or two on it, it'll be fine. From inside Naruto, Kyuubi expanded her senses, trying to find where Haku was. Judging by the bits and pieces of broken ice mirror, she was probably outside the blast radius, in various degrees of pain. Speaking of fine, your fine-ass cousin is currently smoldering in a crater about 100 feet away next to that crane. You might want to help her. Naruto's eyes widened as he rushed over to machine to find a clearly smoking, clearly naked Haku. But that wasn't what made Naruto and Kyuubi's jaw drop. What did surprise them were the large, soft breasts that splayed out from Haku's chest. Haku's AD cup. Naruto gasped. Where the hell did she hide them? She must wrap her breasts or something. It's a common kunoichi practice if I remember correctly. Your mom was a DD and she wrapped her breasts to look more like a C cup. 2 things. 1. Did not want to know that. 2. Actually fuck 2. Did not want to know that. You humans and your views on incest. Animals in the wild mate with their family all the time, why should this be any differ? Lalalala not listening lalalala la. He made a show of mentally plugging his ears despite the fact that her voice was in his head. You do realize that if Haku has the hots for you and if you two do get together that you'd be fucking your cousin, right? It's distant relation, sure, but the fact remains she's still your family. Single quote. Single quote. And that's why you don't argue with a several millennia old, giant demon fox. Also your girlfriend is still baking there, you might wasn't to do something about that. Naruto blinked then looked back down to Haku. Sure she was naked, but he could definitely see the reddened skin along her body and the tiny flecks of rock that had lodged in her skin with little trickles of blood flowing out of the wounds. Quickly thinking, he condensed some water from the air and cooled the water down with his hyoten, then slowly rubbed the ice along the inflamed flesh, using what little medical jutsu he knew from teaching Sakura to heal the wounds. It wasn't much, but by the time he was through, her breathing had returned to normal and her skin was the pale milky color it was before, though there were still several blood spots where rock chips had gone too deeply to heal, so he had wrapped them in a piece of his torn shirt. After tending to her wounds, he pulled out his storage scroll, which luckily had survived, along with most of his wardrobe, intact. He pulled a blanket out and laid Haku on it before wrapping her in it, trying to make it as comfortable as possible. He straightened when he heard the sound of footsteps behind him. Well kid, Zabuza chuckled, a not-so-hidden smirk on his face, Kakashi and Sasuke not far behind him. Seems like you beat Haku in a fairly impressive fight. I do love it when they go out with a bang like that. He nodded once. I guess a deal's a deal. Me and Haku are in your care, but if you go back on this little bargain of yours, his smirk changed to a scowl, your head is mine. He would have said more, but a loud tapping was heard from the beginning of the bridge. Well, it seems I've been betrayed. And here I thought you ninja respected the honor of your clients. I guess I was wrong. Zabuza. Gato tapped his cane once more as the ninja on the bridge turned to see the billionaire himself had graced them with his presence, along with the veritable army of goons standing behind him. Zabuza growled. Yeah right, you were planning to double-cross me first, you swine. That bastard squad of cheap liquor and bad steel behind you is proof enough of that. Gato let loose low, dark chuckle. Maybe so, but I did put a lot of effort into guaranteeing your demise. I can see you're not as tired as I'd hoped you'd be, but I paid good money to hire the very best mercenaries, still not as much as I would have paid you. You missing nin are all so very expensive to maintain after all. Kakashi scanned the crowd of mercenaries, quickly guessing their numbers and skills. This isn't good, Zabuza, he whispered to him, Naruto catching most of what he said. He wasn't kidding. There's close to 250 of them, and at least 30 of them are samurai. From their weapons and armor they look to be deserters from the land of iron. The military there is nothing but samurai, and those samurai are taught how to handle and manipulate chakra to power their blades. He glanced at the polished and well-kept blades the men carried. They are masters of kenjutsu and taught the tactics of and how to deal with shinobi. With that many of them on Gato's payroll, even I would have trouble fighting them. Gato chuckled again. I can see you eyeing my little squad of samurai. Yes, these guys were a bit more expensive than your standard merc fare, but they make up the lack of destructive quality from most ninja with a nice destructive quantity. Gato stared at each ninja in turn before his gaze finally landed on Haku, and let a creepy, disgusting grin cross his face. He turned his head to address a slightly more well-dressed mercenary among the group. Kill the men and bring me that girl, he said loudly, not really caring who heard him. After I have a little fun with that bitch, we go to kill Tazuna. His smirk turned predatory. Who knows, if you goons do a good enough job I may let you have some fun with the bastard's daughter and the little pink-haired ninja over there. Oh, he did not just threaten to rape Haku, Tsunami, and your teammate. You're not gonna just let him say that shit, right, Naruto? Naruto. After a second or two of no reply, Kyuubi looked back at the mental representation of her container's emotions and gasped. The small and normally pure white orb was glowing a deep crimson red with flames licking at the air above it. Oh shit, he's beyond pissed. Outside his mindscape, Naruto's eyes were shadowed by his bangs. Slowly a single thread of chakra rose around him, the deep crimson energy swirling around his body, picking up bits of dirt or rock and flicking them off to the side. Kakashi froze, as a shiver of fear went up his spine. He knew that feeling, and it could only mean one thing. Kyuubi. Zabuza also felt the energy. It was oppressive, stifling even. In all his years of being a shinobi, he had never felt a chakra like this. It was spreading a killing intent over the entire bridge like a mist, much like his own hidden mist jutsu, but far, far more malevolent. Sasuke stared at Naruto's back, his breath coming out in gasps. The last Uchiha fell to his knees and started sweating heavily. He couldn't breathe. It felt like sitting at the bottom of the ocean, the pressure forcing you down, suffocating you, killing you. During all this, he didn't even noticing his eyes flicker for a moment from the deep black, which was his normal color, to a rich crimson red, only interrupted by his pupil and a single tomo. His final though before he passed out was, Is this Naruto? Before all went black, Kakashi heard Sasuke's gasp and turned back to see him just before he collapsed, catching a single glimpse of red in Sasuke's eyes. Well, that was unexpected. Can't say I'm not happy for him, but this is serious. Naruto is using the Kyuubi's chakra. Is the seal weakening? Is the Kyuubi breaking free? Gato and his thugs on the other hand were all damn near pissing themselves. In Gato's case, well, the wet stain running down his leg tipped off anyone who bothered to look. Hell, even the stoic samurai had a grimace on their face, beads of sweat rolling down their forehead and their breath deepening. Despite their training against such things, the killing intent focused on them was far beyond anything they had trained for. Naruto noticed none of this. His gaze was dead set on Gato, more specifically his eyes. Not once did either of them blink. Scared, fear-filled eyes met red, slitted, bestial eyes. Gato knew that it was dead set on his death. He could see it, feel it, could damn near taste it. Naruto let out a throaty growl, a scowl clear on his face. Gato, I was going to be merciful and give you to the villagers to let them decide your fate, but no, not now. No one threatens the people I care about, Gato. Your ass is mine. Gato pointed one finger at the blonde and stuttered out, what are you fuckers waiting for? It's just one boy. Kill him. The group of mercenaries let out a roar and charged the lone genin. They didn't make it halfway to him. Flying through dozens of hand seals at speeds even Kakashi was surprised by, the boy finished his chain of seals with hands clasped together. Water release. Raging torrent. Water from both sides of the bridge sloshed up from the ocean and swirled around Naruto for a moment before meeting the charging band of mercenaries head-on. In moments they were up to the thighs in the rising brackish liquid. Naruto's scowl never left as he flashed through several more hand seals, slapping his hands onto the river of water that had formed on the bridge. Ice release. Frozen wave. The water flash froze. The lucky ones were caught in the ice around their waist. The unlucky ones were those that hadn't been hit with the water yet as they caught the rapidly freezing liquid coming towards them, the leading wave forming deadly spears. Several cries rang out, as blood stained the ice. Funnily enough, Gato had survived the attack, both the initial wave and the freezing of said wave, and was backed up against a wall staring at the bloodied corpses of the back line of his men, as the rest of the living ones struggled in waist-deep ice. Then, as if to signify their last moments on this earth, the sound of Naruto's ninja sliding from its sheath was heard. Naruto held the blade in front of his face, the edge glowing a eerie green. Wind release. Wind cutter. He cried, and with a single swipe of his sword Naruto released an immense blade of wind. The results were messy. Zabuza watched the attack tear into the helpless fools that dared to attack Naruto. Hey Kakashi. Yeah Zabuza. Did I ever mention that I like that kid? Yes Zabuza. Several times already. Good, because he's just been upgraded to don't fuck with status. Quote. Kakashi stared blankly at the man who had this look of utter joy at the way the kid just destroyed his enemies, that and a decent amount of respect for him protecting the honor of his adopted daughter, though the hard-headed man would never admit it. Kakashi just shook his head and looked back at the destruction, just in time to see Naruto picking up the little leech that had caused this country so much trouble. Wait. Please don't kill me, Gato begged miserably, holding his hands up in front of him, trying to appease to the demon of anger and vengeance that had manifested itself in the young blonde boy holding him several feet off the ground. If it's money you want, I'll give you whatever you want. Land, women, power, I'll give you all of it, just please spare me. The perpetual scowl on Naruto's face deepened. I don't want your dirty money, Gato, or your crooked land holdings, or the whores you've broken to satisfy your own twisted needs, and as you can see, I have all the power I need to kill you. Naruto raised a hand, preparing to end the wretched mon's life and free the people of Wave, but something stopped him. It was Zabuza's hand. Remember, I need the information this prick has if I'm going to be joining Konoha. That was the whole point of me following this asshole from the beginning. Naruto nodded and lowered the man. Gato let out a sigh of relief, glad that his feet were touching the ground, only for that sigh to turn into a gurgle as he quickly changed hands. From Naruto's grasp on the collar of his business suit to Zabuza's iron-clad grip on his neck. Now about that information, Gato. Zabuza prodded menacingly. It's at my headquarters, my office, TT top right drawer, far right S side. Zabuza dropped the short man and rushed off to grab the documents he wanted, not even bothering to look back. Gato sighed again, tensing just to get ready in case he became someone else's ragdoll for that evening. He looked up into the hate-filled eyes of Naruto, shivering slightly as they changed from blue to red and back again. From what? He could only guess. Naruto growled a deep throaty growl. Well, Gato, what do we do with you now? Please, I'll give all the money I've taken and more back to Wave. Just please don't hurt me. Gato actually got on his knees and bowed to the blonde, who could only look on in disgust at the man, but in a show of restraint he humored him. If, and I do mean if, you tell me where you keep your money, I will promise you that neither I nor my associates will harm you. It's in a safe at my headquarters here. It's right next to the filing cabinet that Zabuza is most likely looking through right now. Combination is 5871. Naruto nodded. Very well, Gato. You kept your end of the bargain. I shall keep mine. Neither I nor my associates will harm you in any way. Gato kept his head bowed. A dark, evil grin spread across his face. That's right, take my bribe, you son of a bitch. I don't need the money from this hellhole. I built my company from nothing. This is only a minor setback. He was imagining all the things he'd do to the blonde when he finally got his resources back together from this fuck-up, when he felt his knees and hands leave the ground. Looking up, he saw the most terrifying thing he'd ever seen in his life. The glowing red eyes of the boy who'd promised to spare his life, and his grinning, fanged mouth crooked in a wicked smirk. But YYUS said. He started, only to be turned around to face the large gathering of people behind him. The citizens of Wave, it seemed, had developed a backbone while his army was getting torn apart. Gato paled drastically. I said I and my associates. That means me, my team, Zabuza and Haku-chan. I didn't say anything about the people of Wave. Gato let out a whimper, then a scream as he was tossed towards the angry citizens of Wave. He landed in a heap, leaving bits of skin on the concrete of the bridge. He's all yours. Naruto waved at the civilians and their shocked faces at having their tyrant delivered to them in a nice, bloody basket. Naruto turned away from them as Gato's screams grew. The people of Wave, it seemed, neither forgot nor forgave his treatment of them, and they would make sure he felt every agonizing second of it. -4 days later, with the help of Naruto, Kakashi and Zabuza's clones, the bridge was built in record time. A few earth jutsus here, fire jutsu there, and many of the jobs requiring dozens of man-hours took minutes. Now the Konoha team, Haku, Zabuza and the entire population of Wave was standing on the bridge waiting for Tazuna to christen the new bridge in a ceremony due to their heroes, their saviors. We can't thank you enough. Tazuna smiled, dressed in a moderate business suit and tie, at least trying to be well dressed for the occasion. He reached out a hand to the young man in front of him. With his help, the country of Wave would prosper, and with it the lives of everyone whose hope had been restored by the young blonde. Naruto grinned and shook the offered hand. Don't you worry about it, old man. Just call any time you need me to bust some heads. I'll come running. He. I don't think we'll need someone like that for quite some time, me boy. The blonde laughed. Well, whatever the future holds, I guess. If you're ever in the neighborhood, stop by and pay me a visit. I'll do the same. The kid's grin was infectious as most of the people around him, along with Tazuna, Tsunami and Inari, shared the simple smile. The people of Wave waved goodbye as the 5 ninja made their way across the bridge, back to the land of fire and Konoha. Hey Gramps. Yeah Inari. Chizuna turned to the young boy who was staring after the ninja, still thinking on what Naruto, or at least his clone, had told him, when he had tried to save his mother from Gato's goons. Have you got a name for the bridge yet? He turned his gaze to the older man questioningly. Can't say that I have. Why? Do you have a name for it? Inari smiled. How about the Hero's Bridge? Chizuna couldn't help but laugh. That's a wonderful name, Inari. He turned to watch the ninja, who were nothing but specks by now. A bridge on which a hero once stood. Yes, that is a great name for the place which Naruto Uzumaki became our hero. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.